Hello, everyone, and welcome back to New Number Ones. My name is Corey of the Smart Avengers, and you're here with me now. For those who are uninitiated, New Number Ones is a show where every week I go into my local comic book store and I grab a new number one comic off of the wall for that particular week. The premise being we're going to try to highlight smaller independent companies and publishers and give them some attention and see basically if this is a series that I would like to continue and give you my honest thoughts on it. That being said, this is for the week of January the 28th, and the new number one comic I picked up was Do Not Disturb, issue number one by Invader Comics. So this is created and written by David R. Flores and Jarod Hunter Rowe, with art by David R. Flores. I've never heard of Invader Comics before, and I have to say, initially, what kind of just stood out to me was the cover art. Uh, Being that it had sort of an Art Deco look to it. I'm a sucker for Art Deco, especially any sort of art from the early 1920s. I'm going to be a massive fan of. So the premise of this comic is it is a detective story with a supernatural twist. It is set in a old decrepit hotel called the Argyle, with a private investigator looking after the disappearance of a young girl. I will tell you, initially, I wasn't really sure how I was feeling about this. Whenever you do sort of a noir detective kind of comic or story, some things start to feel really cliche, including the dialogue. So there are a couple of times here where our main character, Randall, was Randall, right? I want to say it's Randall. Randall, is that your name? Yeah, it's Randall. Of course, it's Randall. Why wouldn't it be Randall? Where Detective Randall here makes an observation and then kind of makes a cynical, pithy remark after the observation. If you've seen any sort of detective or noir storyline, then you kind of already know what I'm talking about. For me, though, the story really goes into its second gear when it reveals the premise of the book. Basically being that in the midst of investigating the disappearance of this girl, Randall gets killed and is met by another detective who had died some 30, 40 years previously. And now they're having to continue the investigation as ghosts. And the hotel, they're able to kind of go back into previous time periods. So that was a little more interesting. Like I said, if this was going to be just a hard boiled detective storyline, I feel like you could have skipped it and wouldn't have missed too much. But I do think that there's enough kind of juice already in the squeeze for this story that I would love. I actually will continue to read it into issues 2 and 3. The one reason that I'm going to definitely do that is I think the art is beautiful, and I'll show you an example. Um, so the art is by David Flores. Let me see if I could get a good example. Here we go. So this is the interior of the book. Like you said, they're in the 1920s version of the hotel as ghosts. And as you can see, it really does kind of have sure those hard lines that Art Deco is known for. And I think that the color choices are very brilliant. They definitely stand out with the orange and the gold and that sort of tealish, I'd say, turquoise-ish color. Um, Regardless, like I said, I think it's a very beautiful book on regards to its art. So I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm going to pick up probably issues 2 and make this an ongoing for me moving forward. So again, if you're curious about, if you're looking for a kind of noir with a supernatural bent to it, definitely check out Do Not Disturb by Invader Comics. As for the sort of regular news of the show, last week we have officially wrapped up the DC Heroes portion of our bracket, and this upcoming episode on Friday, February the 8th. Yeah, 8th. We'll say 8th. This upcoming Friday, the episode is going to be our DC Villains bracket, where we're going to finally close out the final four of our DC versus Marvel bracket. So we're going to find out what character is going to join Scarlet Witch, Apocalypse, and John Constantine in our final four. And if those are very odd names to you, then you should definitely check out the previous episodes where we landed on Scarlet Witch, Apocalypse, and John Constantine, because to our maybe our own detriment, we introduced a very chaotic element to picking and determining winners in a bracket, and it's chaotic. Speaking of chaotic, my cat keeps headbutting the desk here, so that's why the camera's shaking. I'm gonna probably go before he inevitably jumps up here and closes the whole thing entirely. So by all means, check out Do Not Disturb by Invader Comics, and I'll see you next week with another new number one. See you later. Goodbye.